Hi everybody, welcome to our YouTube channel, and we are going to be doing our student skills for surviving and thriving during COVID-19 and beyond. I'm Dexter-Mazza. I'm the first author of a curriculum that has been designed and developed for high school and middle school students, as well as elementary kids, as we'll work with trying to help teach some of these skills to help us deal with our emotions and our situations that are happening during COVID-19. First, I'd like to introduce the classroom or my family, and I will start with Jackson. Go ahead, Jackson, introduce yourself.
My name is Jackson. I'm 13 and I am in 7th grade.
My name's Grace. I'm 8 and I'm in 2nd grade.
My name's Ashton. I'm 12 and I'm in 6th grade.
Great, and then finally,
good morning, everybody. I'm Lizz Dexter-Mazza, and I'm so excited. I'm going to be teaching you guys in a little bit after I figure out the technology, and Jim's going to get started here with the intros.
all right. As we do with all of our teachings, we want.
Tell them why we're here.
So we're here to help people who are at home during this COVID-19 situation, and so we know that it's really kind of stressful to have parents with their kids home 24/7. It's stressful for our kids to have their parents home 24/7. So what we're trying to do is trying to figure out a way to help us cope with the new environment that we have. And the fact is that we're not going back to school, at least here in Washington State. We're not going back to school for the rest of the academic year. How do we help survive and cope with that type of situation? And not only just get through it, how are we going to thrive? How are we going to actually make this a positive experience? And so that's what we're trying to do with the skills that we're going to be teaching from now all the way through the middle of June. And so we're glad that you're here with us. As we teach skills, and we're going to teach, Liz is going to teach mindfulness this morning, we start with a mindfulness exercise so each time. And so I'm going to ask you guys to stand up. We're going to do what's called Zen counting. And this is an exercise, and if you're at home, you can join us. Have people just stand up. The idea is that we're going to count from 1 to 20, and we're going to not look at each other. Each one of us is going to say a number. You can't say two numbers right in a row, and you can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So you want to make sure that it's paused in between each number. You can't give any clues to each other, like your turn, right? Or like a handshake or whatever else, all right? So the idea is that we want to guess using our mindfulness, our Zen skills, to figure out who's going to say what number next. If you happen to say the same number at the same time, it goes all the way back to 0 again, all right? Do we have any questions about that? And if you have any questions or comments, just go ahead and please put them in the chat bar, and we will try to respond to those. So I'm going to give it a few seconds here to see if anybody's commenting about that, and then I'm going to have Liz come and join us so we can do our Zen counting together.
Other people saying that they love this game.
All right, so Liz, why don't you come and join us? Remember, we're going to start at 1, all right? The idea is not to look at each other. Maybe you have to look down so that you're not giving any clues with your eyes. And then we're going to count to 20. So we're going to try to do this. It's been a hard exercise that we've tried before in this household. All right, look, turn, there you go, ready? 1.
1,
Okay, let's try again, Grace. 1.
2,
3,
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
1.
2,
1,
2,
2,
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
1,
2,
3.
What?
No.
I said
1,
2.
I just
3.
said 2.
Oh,
4,
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
7,
1.
2,
2,
1.
1,
2,
1,
2,
1,
2,
2,
1,
2,
3,
3, 1,
2,
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
7,
8,
9,
10.
10.
Okay, so close.
All right.
and
I hope that you guys were able to get a
Guys,
little
can
bit
you
further than
put
we
that
did.
shade down, please?
We actually got up to 10.
our highest.
And we couldn't get any further there, so people got very excited about getting that far, and so that's where we went. So again, the idea behind that mindfulness exercise is for us to be putting our minds where we want it to be, not our minds putting us where we don't want to be. All right, and that'll be really important. Liz is going to expand on that and why that's so important, especially during this time of COVID-19, and especially as it's one of our really core skills that we learn for dealing with emotion regulation. All right? And so thank you again for joining us, and I'll see you at the end.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Good morning. So, as some of you know, you've been following us on Facebook Live. We started out on Zoom. We got Zoom bombed there, and then we went to Facebook Live. That was great, but then we realized we were limiting those who could watch us if they didn't have Facebook accounts. And so now we're on YouTube Live, and this is our first day trying that. And those of you, again, who've been following us know that we are learning this as we go. We don't know how to use this technology. I spent the last 45 minutes getting coached through YouTube Live and how to live stream on it. So we're just trying to figure it out as we go. We appreciate your grace and non-judgmentalness as we do this, as we just want to kind of provide the skills to our kids and these skills for surviving COVID-19 to all of you as well. So Jim's over here going to manage the technology now. He's going to be reading your comments and letting us know what those are. I hope everybody's got some paper and pens and pencils so you can take notes. We'll flash some handouts up on the screen so you can see some slides and pictures. I'll write some things on the boards, but mostly we want you to be able to write them down because we know when you write things down, you encode it a little bit better as well. So thanks for all of you who've joined us over here on YouTube Live, following us from Zoom to Facebook and now to here. We're going to ask throughout the show, throughout and at the end, that you like the videos and that you subscribe as we keep learning about how the analytics work on social media. So we need subscribers so that more people can watch these videos. All right, are you guys ready this morning?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah? Okay, thank you. So we are going back to mindfulness this week because that's one of the things we do in our DBT STEPS-A curriculum and in outpatient clinical DBT work as well, is mindfulness skills are so core. You hear us talking about them in all of the different lessons. So between modules, we tend to go back. And I know we were working in emotion regulation the last week, and now I just want to go back as we practice observing and describing the different parts of an emotion. I want us to go back this week and just go, what is mindfulness again? Especially for those new folks who are joining us now as we kind of go through. So you guys ready to go all in? You guys are a little tired today, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not tired, but my head's a little frazzled with trying to figure out all this video technology this morning. I don't know where my coffee went, Ashton. Thank you for thinking about that. I'm sure it'll show up magically in a few moments here for me. So, mindfulness. Let's first just talk about what is mindfulness.
Being in control.
Being mindful. Okay.
Yeah.
What would your teacher say if you answered the definition of a question of a word with the word itself?
That's not the right way to describe something.
Right. So when you think of mindfulness, what are some of the words you would use other than mindful to describe what is mindfulness?
Being
in control of your decisions.
Being in control of your mind rather than letting your mind be in control of you.
Ooh,
What
nice
does that
one,
mean?
Jackson.
That's exactly what it says.
It's what it
And
says
what
there.
does
You're
that
reading on the handout, right? So being in control of your mind and being focused, putting your attention where you want it to be. Ashton, that's really common. How many of you guys think when you hear mindfulness, you think, right? How many of you think of that as mindfulness? Some of you do? Okay.
Probably just post it in the chat if
Yeah.
you do.
So if that's what you think, a lot of people think that is. And that is part of mindfulness. And there's a lot of other mindfulness as well. Like Zen counting, that was a mindfulness activity, right? Even though we weren't just sitting and breathing and watching our breath, we were doing an activity because there's so many parts of it. Because mindfulness really is about being present in this moment without judgment and without trying to change it. Okay? So hear that. It's being present now without judgment and without change. Okay, and I'm just going to flip that over so you guys can all see what I just wrote on that board there. Okay, so it's being present now without judgment and without trying to change the moment here. Okay? All right. And that's what we just want to keep coming back to and keep thinking about. Being present right now without trying to change it. So when we're doing that Zen counting, right? How many of you guys were trying to think about change? Like, oh, somebody don't say, someone stop talking. It's my turn to say this. It's my turn to say that. Right? Kind of getting ahead of thinking about your strategy maybe of how fast or slow you're in the next moment rather than in this moment. Right? That would be not being mindful. Or you guys, I didn't even get to tell you guys what happened to me this morning. A lot of times think of mindfulness as the opposite of mindlessness. And mindlessness is when you just do something without thinking. Like you're not even paying attention, right? Maybe when you like scratch your face or something or bite your fingernails, you don't even notice that you're doing it. You're doing it mindlessly, right? Can you stop, please? Thanks. And here's what I did this morning. I made coffee early this morning for myself while I was also trying to be in a meeting. And I went and I grabbed the coffee creamer out of the fridge and I poured it into my cup. And then I realized that I just poured egg whites into my coffee this morning. That would be a great example of mindlessness, of trying to do two things at once and not paying attention. So I almost drank raw egg whites in my coffee this morning, right? Or do you sometimes notice when you are, sitting around and you're fidgeting, or maybe you're tapping and you don't even notice that you're doing it, or you're sitting in class, like now with all this school from home, how many of you are like sitting on your computers, and then all of a sudden you don't even notice that you're on another web page somewhere, right? That you have scrolled to YouTube videos, or you're now texting on your phone and you didn't even pay attention to it. You just mindlessly did it because some notification popped up in your screen or something. Has that happened for any of you? Right? Has that happened for you at home? Having to notice that. So mindfulness is about being aware of where you are in this moment. Make sense? Okay. So on your handout it talks about that there's two kinds of mindfulness, right? Can you remember what those...
Emotion mind and reasonable mind.
Right, those are the two states of mind. We're going to get to that in a minute.
Mind.
And wise mind, those are the states of mind we're going to get to in a minute. But what I want you to think about first is mindfulness always about just holding my attention right here, right now?
No.
No.
Open mind.
Right? Because there's also an open mind. Right, Jackson? Exactly. Right, so we have focused mind, right? Right, focused mind, put my attention where I want it to be in this moment. Like if I'm supposed to be listening to my teacher lecture online in a video, and maybe it's going on for a while and long and long and long, and then you notice some notification pops up on your computer screen, like a new YouTube video for someone you're subscribed to, or a friend put a chat request in the chat line, or somebody texts you. Do you notice that your attention starts to shift over here? So focused mind is about noticing that you maybe get distracted and bringing your attention back to your teacher doing their video lecture, right? Putting it where you want it to be. Or if you're in a big sports game, right? Actually, sometimes when you're playing soccer, right? What happens when you're goalie sometimes during the game?
It gets boring.
It gets boring because you're just kind of hanging out on one end of the field by yourself, right? And then do you get distracted?
Yeah.
And what kind of things do you get distracted with?
Loud noises and other soccer games.
Other soccer games, right? Or just hanging on the goalie net,
Oh yeah.
right? Sometimes. And then where do you have to put your attention?
On the field.
Right, you have to notice that and get your attention back into the field, right? So keeping your attention where you want it to be in the moment. And then there's open mind, awareness mind. Ashton, can you read us what awareness mind is? And can you talk loud so make sure everybody can hear you?
Yeah. Full awareness. Full awareness. Being aware of the present moment. I.E. Thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. Without judgment and without trying to change it.
Right, so that's being aware of what's happening around you and also what's happening inside of you. Like this morning when I was not able to get the YouTube live to work, and if some of you tried to get into the original link we sent out, you notice it had to be deleted because somehow I went on live this morning trying to figure it all out. And it was just a live video of me working through all of that. So we had to delete it, and that's why that original link didn't work, right? And I noticed as I was doing it, I was starting to get a little anxious, right? Like I started getting like tightness in my stomach and some fluttering in my chest because there was some irritation and anxious. So I was having mindful awareness of some of that. Do you guys ever notice that? Can you notice sometimes when your emotions or physical sensations are starting to increase inside your body? Right? Do you ever notice when your emotions are starting to go up, like when you're starting to get more and more and more frustrated with something? Sometimes, right? And that's sometimes ish, right? And that's why practice of mindfulness is so important, because we don't want you to just to go from like all of a sudden like you're fine and then all of a sudden you notice your emotions are so high at like a really big level. What if you could notice as they're slowly growing, as they're slowly going up? Like I'm thinking, Grace, of sometimes like when we're playing board games and playing Forbidden Desert and you're trying to make some suggestions and ideas, and then like you feel like people aren't listening to you, and then you start getting more and more agitated with things. So noticing, being aware of when your hands are moving all around the place, when they're tapping, right? Just being aware of that in your body and bringing your focus back to this moment. Does that make sense for what mindfulness is? Mm-hmm. So mindfulness isn't just this. It's really about being here right now and putting your attention where you want it to be in the moment, and also being aware of what's happening inside of you during that time, right? And a big part of mindfulness I always think about is like that mindfulness pause. Taking that quick pause and break between our urge to do a behavior and the actual doing of the behavior. That's what we're going to talk a lot about through all of our lessons, right? There's the urge to bite on your nails, and then the behavior of biting your nails. The urge to switch to YouTube videos when you're in online school, and then the actual switching of it. And there's that pause when you can be mindful and notice that urge. Then you can also really be aware of choosing to do that behavior or not. And mindfulness, these mindfulness skills are going to help us get there. Okay? And you guys like doing all the different mindfulness activities, right? And which ones do you like more? Do you like doing like the participate activities?
Letter switch and Zen counting.
Letter switch, Zen counting, sound ball.
Zen counting and sound ball.
And you like those more than when we say let's practice following our breath?
Yeah, I like letter switch and then the mindful eating, but that's just because you get to eat something.
Mindful eating. Okay, so you like the more active ones on things. And so here's the thing though, guys. We could do all active, participate, fun games for mindfulness, and that could help teach us some of the mindfulness skills. What it wouldn't teach us though, when we sit quietly and we watch our breath and we focus, is how to notice more of those urges in our bodies and sit still. So it's important that we practice both our sitting and breathing mindfulness and our active participate ones, because we need to be able to practice noticing the urge to move when we're sitting still, and to be able to watch our breath, to sit with uncomfortableness in our body sometimes. And it's important to be able to figure out how do we live mindfully and do things with walking around with our eyes open all the time. In a lot of our practices that we'll do when we do mindfulness, we'll talk about how we're going to do them with our eyes open, because we don't walk around the world with our eyes closed, and we want to practice living mindfully. Make sense? All right, so let's talk about those 3 states of mind you guys mentioned earlier for me. All right, tell me again, what's those 3 states of mind?
Wise mind, reasonable mind, and emotion mind.
Okay, same slower now. One at a time.
Wise mind, reasonable mind, and
Emotion mind.
Wise mind, reasonable mind, and emotion mind. Okay, so everybody at home, I want you to draw a picture that has 2 overlapping circles on it. Okay? And we're going to write reasonable mind on one side. And emotion mind on the other. And then down here in this balance spot, we're going to have wise mind. Okay? And these are 3 phrases and words I want you to be thinking about using a lot at home, because it's a good way for us all to recognize when we're in a different state of mind. Sorry, there we go. when we're in a different state of mind, so that you can be able to identify mindfully when your emotions are taking over and taking control. Okay? So let's start with emotion mind. What does emotion mind mean, guys?
Having your emotions, like, put a
What I feel
blindfold
to
over
be
your
prefrontal cortex.
prefrontal cortex.
Nope, not close, not prefrontal cortex. Emotion mind is where our feelings are. And which part of the brain? I love that you guys remember this. What part of the brain?
Is that
The back.
The back. Do you remember what it's called?
The prefrontal cortex.
The amygdala. That's right, Ashton. High five. It's the prefrontal cortex we're going to get to. That's in
Yeah,
the
they
front of
put-
our brain.
No, they put
right?
a blindfold over you.
And that's going to be when we get to reasonable mind.
I can't say it.
All right, slow down. Let's try to say it again, Grace.
Prefrontal cortex.
Okay. Right, and that's going to be when we get to reasonable mind. So the emotion mind is like our emotion control center. Think about in the movie Inside Out, right? There was the emotion control command center where all of the emotions were taking over and running the show. And when those emotions got really, really high, right, emotion-based behaviors happened. Yes? Right? Okay? Right? So I always think about that emotion mind is like when the amygdala throws a blindfold over reasonable mind and completely
Prefrontal
shuts it out.
cortex.
Right, the prefrontal cortex completely shuts it out with a blindfold. And then our emotions are taking control. But does that mean that emotions are all bad?
No.
No. Right?
Because happy is an emotion.
Because happy is an emotion, right? So do we want to get rid of our emotions altogether, an emotion mind altogether?
No.
No, we want to have our emotions. And we want to pay attention to our emotions because they give us a lot of information, right? So, what was I going to say? So, kind of thinking about that, when you're in emotion mind, when I think of emotion mind, I think is when your emotions are really, really high, right? And Grace, you described this once as like a balloon. And it's like when you're blowing up a balloon and it's growing and growing and growing, and it's so big and tight that it's about to pop, right?
And then it does pop.
And then it does pop. Like that's emotion mind. When the balloon is really, really big and tight and gonna pop on that.
It does pop.
And what kind of behaviors do you think happen when your emotions are so high and you're in
your balloon pops.
So when you're really angry, what would emotion mind be doing?
Feeling your anger.
No, but what behavior would you be doing if your emotion
I think
mind was
running
really...
up to my room and sticking my head.
Throw a
think
Okay,
tantrum.
hold
just
on a
be
sec, Grace. Go ahead, Ashton.
I think you'd just be really sensitive.
You might be really sensitive. Do you think you'd have any big behaviors when you're really, really angry?
Yeah.
What would be big angry behaviors?
Like getting mad,
Like getting mad? And what do you do when you get mad sometimes?
yell.
Yelling at someone. Sometimes maybe throwing something or screaming.
Maybe being stubborn.
Being stubborn or breaking, like slamming the door and not listening to the other person.
Calling myself names.
Calling yourself names when you're really angry. Right? Those are some really big behaviors. What about if you get too much excitement and too much joy?
You can make stupid decisions.
Like what? What would be a problem behavior that you would do if you have too much excitement or too much joy?
You cross the line.
Cross the line. Can you give me an example?
You're too,
Okay, one at a time.
I'll let Grace go.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
you're too funny. At least you're trying to be funny, and then you're too funny that it like does something bad, and like it's funny
Banter.
the first time, and then it just turns into.
Okay, so maybe like you're being funny or you're joking around with your friends and you're getting all excited and then you kind of cross the line and you say something really hurtful.
Like banter.
But it goes beyond banter. Like there's friendly banter and then there's just kind of meanness and bulliness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it goes too far over the line with banter. From friendly to unkind. Joking around to really mean and bullying, right? And that's where excitement can get too much. Or when like you're playing a board game and you're being silly and you're like playing with different pieces and all of a sudden you knock all the pieces off the table. Like we talk, that's one of the things about like mindful awareness is to notice when your emotions are getting ramped up that big. So emotion mind is when your emotions are in control. When you're making decisions completely based on emotions, right? And so it's really helpful sometimes to notice that and to be able to ask yourself or ask somebody you're with or in your family to say, do you think this is an emotion-minded decision right now? Do you think you're in emotion mind right now? That's something we want to think about, right? Okay. So if emotion mind is when our emotions are really big and our emotions are running the show, what's reasonable mind?
No emotion and just doing things based on facts.
Logistics.
Logistics. Say more about that.
The logical roots.
The logic.
What makes sense?
Mm-hmm. With zero emotion at all, right? So like think about, I'm thinking like one of the game you play of like Satisfactory, right? It's just you're building factories and just doing what makes sense to get you the things that you need in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there any emotion involved sometimes in that?
No, not really.
Right, so you're just kind of staying right there. But if, say, somebody else was to start playing with you and they came in and like destroyed one of your factories, what might happen?
I might get mad at them.
You might get mad and maybe you'd act in emotion mind and go destroy something of theirs. And then there'd be like potentially this war on it.
War.
Yes, no, I don't really understand the game.
No, you don't understand the game at all.
Okay,
It's
all right.
my world, my factories.
Okay,
You take
so
from the
what else
person.
happens in reasonable mind? What other kind of things do we need to do in reasonable mind?
Not do anything
Math.
like rash.
Math, right. Math is something that we have to do in reasonable mind often, right? Because what happens when you start getting frustrated trying to do math and emotions start coming in really high,
You get bad at math.
right? You may make mistakes or you have a hard time kind of focusing on that, right? Especially if like you just came out of PE, right, at school and now you're having to go in to take a math test.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
Right, that'd be really hard. Like to just like trying to really be all in reasonable mind there, and calming down some of those emotions. I also think of like there are some jobs that people have that we really want them in reasonable mind. Like when you're building things, construction, right? You want to look at the facts and not just what like I feel like getting this done quickly, and I'm just gonna work on this really fast while you're supposed to be like doing very specific measurements. Air traffic controller, right? Like somebody who's an air traffic controller, right? We want them in reasonable mind, looking at the number of planes that are coming in the sky. When they're landing, who's on the ground and how they have to maneuver them all around, and that every plane is like 300 people, right? That's a good thing for reasonable mind over here.
Don't you know a little bit of emotion to try and make it like fun?
A little bit. Well, this is where we're going to get into, right? So reasonable mind says like there's no emotion at all. Emotion mind says there's no reason or logic at all. Now, those seem like really far extremes. Are those really places we want to be all the time?
Just the exact opposite.
Right. They don't. So if we don't want to be on one extreme or the other, what would be the middle path? What would be the combination of them?
Wise mind.
Wise mind, exactly, right? We want this wise mind. And sometimes, wise mind could be as big, like that. It can be really big on all of this piece. And sometimes it's just small, right? Sometimes wise mind just has a little bit of overlap between the two, right? It could be big or small. But it's taking into consideration both sides, right? Of our emotions and the reason and the logic and the facts and things when we make decisions. So what are some things that wise mind decisions we might make about stuff?
Like not to do something just out of emotions, like don't do anything rash.
Don't do anything rash, right? So think about what the consequence of that is. What'd you say? To notice your emotions, right? And say like, okay, is this going to get me closer to what I want or further away from what I want? Right? Like I really want this thing, and if I act on that emotion to get it, I may get it right now, but later on I'm going to get less.
Yeah.
Right? Like trying to get through our math assignments or our school assignments really fast. And if we get through it really fast, sometimes what happens when emotions want them to just be done?
You get it wrong.
You get it wrong, and then you have to
Redo
it. So it takes even longer, and then you're further away from being done with your schoolwork. So, an emotion-minded decision might be to just rush through your assignment, and wise mind in there is like, okay, slowing yourself down. I don't want to be working on this, and I don't want to be working on this twice as long. So getting back to a wise mind decision, finding that middle path. Yeah, Grace.
when to choose wise mind, reasonable mind, or emotion?
So that's a great question. Grace's question was, how do you know when to choose between wise mind, reasonable mind, and emotion mind? Well, the first thing to do is this is why we practice lots of these mindfulness skills, is to ask yourself, is this a wise-minded choice? Right? And you can ask yourself that throughout the day. Or is this an emotion-minded choice?
Except if you have to do some sort of activity, how do you know which mind to choose?
Well, oftentimes we're going to move towards making wise mind decisions. And even wise mind decisions and reasonable mind decisions
Kind of the same.
they can look exactly the same, except if we only make reasonable minded decisions and ignore all of our emotions, oftentimes we flip back to emotion mind. Right? If you're just stuck between emotion mind and reasonable mind, you flip back and forth. And then sometimes your behaviors kind of feel like out of control and you get sad and frustrated. So in wise mind, we can notice our emotions and we can make decisions based on facts and reason. So I might not want to slow down and use scrap paper to do my math, and I don't like that, and it makes me frustrated and angry that I have to do it. And in reasonable mind, I know if I use scrap paper, I'm going to get it done probably more accurately and faster. So there's that piece that there's the recognizing I don't like this is frustrating, and I'm still going to do the reasonable thing. So that's wise mind. Okay? So asking yourself questions on a regular basis like, am I in emotion mind right now? Is this an emotion-minded decision or is this a wise-minded decision? Right? Can help you there. And here's the tricky thing. Sometimes our emotion minds are super, super smart that they try to trick us. And they try to trick us to think that they're wise mind. They kind of put the wise mind costume on. And so if you are making an imposter, that's right. If you make a decision on something and you're not sure if it's really a wise-minded decision or an emotion-minded decision, here's what I want you to do. I want you to wait for a period of time before you do anything. Because as we talked about previously, and we talked about last week with all of you who were with us, is an emotion only lasts like 60 to 90 seconds, right? And if you wait and say in 4 hours or 5 hours or even in a day, you want to make the same choice, then it was likely a wise-minded decision. If your decision changes, it probably was emotion mind being an imposter.
Imposter.
So you want to kind of check that out on it. Does that make sense? Does that help answer your question, Grace? Kind of. So here's what I want you to do. This will get easier with practice. If you ask yourself throughout the day, is this a wise-minded decision or an emotion-minded decision?
What about the reasonable mind?
And reasonable mind, you can also say, like, is this a reasonable mind, right? Am I following all the facts and logic of what I need to do? And really, we're going to work towards making more wise-minded decisions. Okay? Any questions from folks at home about this? Jim, do we have any questions?
I'm waiting.
Or any? Okay.
Not yet.
All right.
I'll let
So
you know.
here's what we're going to switch to, guys. I want to talk now about the next set of mindfulness skills. We have 2 different kinds of mindfulness skills, and we're going to go through all of our mindfulness skills between today and this coming Thursday. And the first set of mindfulness skills are what we call our what skills. What do you do to be mindful? What do you do so that you can get into wise mind? Right? Because that's our ultimate goal often, is to be in wise mind. To not have our emotion and our reason logic completely running the show. Right? If we think about, I'll go back to the states of mind for a moment. If we think about what TV show or movie have we watched and we know that there are some characters that represent the 3 different states of minds.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. So what are the characters? Who is emotion mind in Harry Potter? Ron Weasley. And who is reasonable mind? Hermione. And then that leaves who?
Harry.
Harry is
Wise mind.
wise mind, right? Making those decisions based on that, right? And so I recommend, like, when you're watching movies or TV shows, to highlight, like, who? Or is that person in wise mind, emotion mind, or reasonable mind? I often also think of, like, Star Wars, that the Jedis, right? like that Luke, they really work on being in reasonable mind. They don't have a lot of emotion, right? Right? They're really in reasonable mind on what the facts are. Except I always think about Anakin. What happened when Anakin's anger got really, really high?
Wait, and what
He got angry.
He got angry. He went to the dark side. And his emotions, when he couldn't control his emotions took over. Right? And that's how he ended up in the dark side. So maybe emotion mind, when you're at that big extreme, is like the dark side.
Wait, is Anakin Darth Vader?
Anakin becomes Darth Vader. That's right.
Okay.
Okay. So back to our mindfulness skills of the what skills. There's 3 what skills. Anybody know what they are?
Nope.
Okay. Our 3 what skills are
Yeah.
to observe.
Describe and participate.
Thank you, Jackson. To observe, describe, and participate. Now here's a silly thing about these things, is that you can only do one of these at a time. Okay. You can only do one of the what skills at a time. So when we're observing, this is what I call simply noticing. When you're observing, you're simply noticing what's happening around you, inside you and around you, without putting words on it, without labeling it, right? I always think of this as my noticing muscles. When I'm practicing my observe skill, I'm trying to strengthen my noticing muscles, right? So if I'm working on, Jackson over here, if I'm working on putting my attention on one thing, and then I get distracted, what muscle do I need to do to bring my attention back?
Muscle.
Right, my noticing muscle, what I was just saying. So you got distracted there for a moment, didn't you?
I'm confused why you need muscle.
Because I call it my noticing muscle, right? It's a muscle I want to strengthen in myself, right?
So it's a figurative muscle.
It's
not
a
actual
figurative muscle. You got it. That's right. Right? It's noticing when my attention goes over here and I want to bring it back. Right? Noticing when I am moving to another screen or social media or some device when I'm supposed to be in class and bringing my attention back. Noticing when I'm distracted and bringing my attention back. Does that make sense? Okay? And because, well, these are the what skills, what you do to be mindful.
Oh, okay.
Right? And the first what skill is we are going to observe. We are going to simply notice what's happening inside of us and around us without putting words on it. We think of it as wordless watching. Paying attention without putting a label on it. Soon we'll talk about how you describe and you put words on things, but for right now, I just want you to work on it. So Grace, this is skill of observe is why we talk about Teflon mind. Do you remember what Teflon mind is?
Basically the exact same
In,
thing as unicorn.
Out.
Okay. In and out, right.
Wait.
So kind of noticing when something comes in and then watching it go right out. So we kind of use
Teflon.
observing sometimes our thoughts of letting it come in our mind and slide right out, just like on a Teflon pan. We have Teflon mind. Have you ever made eggs in a nonstick pan? And then what you did was you kind of go to just flip the pan and the egg slides in, slides right out. That's what a nonstick Teflon pan does. And sometimes we want to let our thoughts just slide in and slide right out. We don't want them to get all stuck, right? Because what happens if you don't put any butter or you don't use a nonstick pan and you put eggs in it? It gets stuck, right? And you got to like scrape it out and it's just stuck there. And they don't slide out. And so we want to practice having a Teflon mind or like a conveyor belt mind where you just notice things coming in and then watch them go out without them staying there. Or a unicorn.
Is basically you're just using your magical horn and you use a shield from that bad emotion.
From your thoughts, right? You get stuck. So Grace uses, and sometimes instead of Teflon mind, she says the word unicorn, which is another word that you use for that, of just noticing your thoughts coming in and the thoughts going out, or sometimes noticing the comments or judgments of others around you come in and letting them come right out without holding on to them.
What I think of unicorn is...
Right? So noticing your hands. Notice where your hands are at any point, and then just kind of keeping them still. Noticing where your attention is, and then keeping it there. Okay, trying to focus and being right here, right now. Does that make sense? So observing is not pushing away your thoughts or your feelings. It's just watching them come in and watching them go out. Make sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay, you guys seem like you're a little bit distracted.
No, Grace was saying something and you kept interrupting her.
I'm sorry, sweetheart.
What I think of a unicorn is basically you're just using your magical mind to go like this, and it just bounces off the bad emotions.
Well, it's not about, no, because we're not trying to push them away. We're just noticing our thoughts and our feelings come in and go out on that, okay? So I want you guys to practice something. We're going to do one thing before we wrap up for today, okay, on this observe skill. And when we come back next week, we'll talk about the describe and participate skills.
Thursday.
On Thursday. Thank you, Jackson. All right, is I want everybody, don't do it yet, but you're going to take your hand and you're going to put it on whatever surface is around you. Not yet, Jackson. Notice the urge and don't act on it, okay? So notice that, and you're going to just, I want you to just notice the sensation of whatever surface you put it on without labeling it, without putting words on it, okay? Just notice, and then I'll ask you to describe it afterwards. So ready? Everybody take your hand and just put it on whatever surface is in front of you. And just notice the sensation of your hand on that surface. Okay, now stop. Can you describe what you noticed?
Well, I noticed that I was putting my hand on my doodling.
Did you notice, what sensations did you notice?
It
It
was
was
flat.
kind of
Flat.
slidey, but
Slidey.
sticky.
Okay, so sticky. We're gonna wonder what's on your paper. It's sticky from
Cool.
breakfast. Cool, flat, right? So you can notice the sensation and then put a word on it.
It was like sticky because
Yep.
my hands are small.
Any thoughts for you?
Describe
Just the words.
just keeping my hands on it and nothing like moving. It actually was kind of painful because I have hangnails and like it's just really little pain, so I don't usually feel it. But because nothing is going on,
So putting all your attention, you noticed kind of some pain in your fingers when you just observed that.
yeah.
Okay.
And it's
And then here's the last thing about observing I want you to know. You can't describe things that you can't observe. So things that we can't observe are other people's thoughts. Another thing we can't observe is other people's intentions, what we think they're going to do. So like, can you guys read my mind and read my thoughts?
Nope.
No, I
No.
have no idea what
Not
you're
unless
thinking
you're
right
psychic or
Right.
telepath.
Right, unless I tell you what I'm thinking. Do we sometimes think we know what other people are thinking though?
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
And does sometimes when we're wrong, that fuels our emotions?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we want to practice. We're just only going to observe what we see. All right, we've gone on for a long time this morning, kind of getting ourselves set up since we started a couple minutes late. I am really thankful to you guys for joining in with us today and kind of participating. And for all of you at home, thank you for joining us as well. I hope this was helpful. On Thursday when we come back, we're going to teach the rest of the mindfulness skills. We'll do some more participate activities and talk about being effective and non-judgmental. We'd love for you to share these videos with your friends. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel for us. That I've learned that actually helps just with people being able to watch and then being able to kind of change the URL so people can find us easier. And then please also join us, parents, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings at 7 a.m. on both Instagram and Facebook Live. We're still doing our parenting through COVID-19, where we're teaching parenting strategies that relate to the lessons we're teaching here to help give ideas and support for this time that we are all continually in for COVID-19. We wish you all a well, skillful, and mindful day. Kind of just the take-home points for today is remember to ask yourselves, is this an emotion-minded decision or am I in wise mind, right? Am I in this moment or am I noticing when I'm getting distracted from it? So like I said, please like our videos, subscribe to the page, and we will see you on Thursday. Take care.
Bye.